The phone rang at exactly 5 o'clock a.m., an unknown number flashing on the screen. When I picked up, a calm, professional voice said, "Good morning, ma'am. This is the police department. Someone has broken into your parents' house." My heart hammered against my ribs, but not for the reason you'd think. Just 12 hours earlier, my sister had looked me straight in the eye and said, "That's just your job in this family." That was right after my parents told me to cancel my dream vacation to stay home and take care of their beloved dog. For 10 years, I was the quiet, obedient daughter who gave up her own life whenever it was convenient for them. But this time, I didn't argue. I packed my bags, walked out the door, and let things happen exactly the way they were going to happen. They thought they had trapped me for good. What they didn't know was that my silence was a fuse and it was already burning. By the time that phone rang, the fuse had already reached the end. My name is Claire. I'm 31 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the invisible one in my family. From the outside, my parents look like warm, loving people. They treat their prize roses like royalty and their Labrador Duke like their favorite child. Then there's my younger sister, Renee. At 27, Renee is the center of the household, the one whose moods decide whether dinner is pleasant or tense, the one whose problems always come first. Whatever Renee wants, Renee gets. My place in the family was always simple. Whatever needed doing, I did it. I was the free labor, the driver, the backup plan, the one nobody thanked because helping was just expected of me. It wasn't always something I noticed. Growing up, I told myself it was normal for the older sibling to pick up the slack. I drove Renee to school when she missed the bus. I covered her shifts at her part-time job more times than I can count so she wouldn't get fired. When our parents needed someone to sit with our grandmother during her last year, it was understood without anyone ever saying it out loud that it would be me. Renee had too much going on. I never had too much going on, apparently, even when I did. Somewhere along the way, I stopped noticing how strange it was that my life was always the flexible one, the one that could bend to fit everyone else's plans. For the past year, my parents had been planning a 3-week trip through Greece and Portugal. It was going to be the trip of a lifetime, the kind of thing they'd talked about since I was a kid. I worked long hours at my accounting firm, took on extra clients during tax season, and saved for months to pay for my own share down to the last cent. I didn't ask them for a single dollar. I wanted to go as an equal, someone who had earned her seat at that table, not as a guest they were doing a favor for. Everything was booked months in advance: flights, hotels, a wine tour through the Douro Valley, a boat trip around the Greek islands. I had a folder on my laptop just for it, full of maps and restaurant recommendations I'd bookmarked late at night when I couldn't sleep. But at our final dinner before the trip, as I looked over the printed itinerary spread across the table, something shifted in the room. My mother set down her wine glass, cleared her throat, and gave me a tragic little smile that made my stomach drop before she'd even said a word. I knew that smile. It was the same one she used right before asking me to give up a weekend, a paycheck, or a plan. "Someone needs to feed Duke and water the plants every day," she said, her voice syrupy sweet, like she was doing me a favor by even bringing it up gently. I stared at her, fork frozen halfway to my mouth. My father suddenly found his steak very interesting and wouldn't meet my eyes, which told me he already knew and had already decided not to fight for me. They wanted me to stay behind. A professional pet sitter, they said, was too expensive and couldn't be trusted with their precious dog. Never mind that I'd found 3 highly rated services online in about 10 minutes. "Why me?" I asked, my voice shaking as I pointed at the itineraries. "Everyone's going. I paid for my own ticket. I've been packing for weeks." That's when Renee looked up from her phone just long enough to say the words that changed everything between us. "That's just your job in this family." She said it flatly, like she was reading off a job description, not ending a relationship. Nobody defended me. My mother simply nodded and added that I was always so reliable, and surely I didn't want to ruin their expensive trip over something so small. My father stayed quiet, which was its own kind of answer. In that moment, the truth hit me hard. To them, I wasn't really a daughter or a sister. I was a tool they picked up whenever they needed something and put down the rest of the time. Instead of arguing or crying, I put my fork down, smiled, and said quietly, "Okay." I want to be honest with you about that moment because it surprised even me. I expected to feel crushed. Instead, I felt something colder and clearer settle into place, like a decision was already being made somewhere underneath my anger before I'd even consciously made it. I called my best friend, Priya, from my car in the driveway before I even went back inside. I was still shaking a little, and I remember her going quiet on the other end of the line while I explained what had just happened at that table. "Claire," she finally said, "you know this isn't the first time, right? You've been doing this since we were in college. You skipped your own graduation dinner to drive Renee to a party." I hadn't even remembered that until she said it out loud. She didn't tell me what to do. She just asked one question that stuck with me the whole drive home. "What do you actually want to do if nobody's feelings mattered right now?" I didn't answer her that night, but I already knew. The next day, the house was chaos. I watched from the hallway as Renee and my parents loaded their suitcases into the car, buzzing with excitement about their trip, laughing about the itinerary I had helped plan. On the way out, my mother gave me a quick pat on the shoulder and said something about how proud she was of how responsible I'd always been. My father muttered a distracted thanks for holding things down. Renee didn't even look up from her phone long enough to say goodbye properly. They genuinely believed they'd won, that they'd guilted their reliable, invisible daughter into spending 3 weeks as an unpaid dog sitter and plant nanny while they toured 2 countries. The moment their car disappeared down the street, I stopped playing along. I went upstairs, pulled out the suitcase I'd already packed and hidden in the back of my closet 3 days earlier, and carried it downstairs. I'd known, somewhere in the back of my mind, that this dinner might go exactly the way it did. I set the house keys on the kitchen counter next to a folder. Inside was a confirmation for a top-rated professional pet and house sitting service. 24-hour monitoring, daily visits, smart cameras included, all paid for with the family emergency credit card my father had given me years ago for exactly this kind of situation and then completely forgotten I still had. I called the agency one more time to confirm the schedule, made sure Duke's feeding times and medication were written down clearly. And once I knew he was in good hands, I locked the front door behind me, called a cab to the airport, and boarded a flight to my own private getaway. A small beach town nobody in my family had ever heard of, let alone visited. Before I tell you what happened next, follow along until the end and drop the city you're watching from in the comments, so I can see how far this story has traveled. For the first 2 days at the beach, I barely checked my phone at all. I read a book by the pool, ate dinner alone at a small restaurant overlooking the water, and slept better than I had in months. Nobody in my family had any idea where I actually was. As far as they knew, I was at home with Duke, watering the roses and answering to nobody. It was strange how quickly my body relaxed once nobody needed anything from me, like I'd been holding my shoulders up near my ears for years without realizing it. The morning sun was just coming through the curtains of my beachside hotel room when my phone buzzed against the nightstand. It was exactly 6 o'clock a.m., which meant it was the middle of the afternoon back where my family was. I reached over, saw an unknown number, and answered, still half asleep. "Good morning, ma'am. This is the police. Someone has broken into your parents' home." My heart pounded, but a strange calm settled over me almost immediately, the kind of calm you feel when something you half expected finally happens. The officer explained that the house-sitting service I'd hired had done exactly what I'd paid them to do. Their security cameras had caught unauthorized movement in the house overnight, and they'd called the police right away, exactly as their contract promised. But the story got stranger from there. The person caught inside wasn't a random stranger at all. It was Renee's boyfriend, a guy my parents had banned from the property months earlier after an incident at Christmas nobody liked to talk about. It turned out Renee had secretly given him the security code before she left, and he'd used the empty house to throw a party with a dozen of his friends, fully convinced nobody would ever know, because the house was supposed to be locked up and empty for 3 weeks. With police already on the scene and Renee's boyfriend sitting in the back of a squad car in handcuffs, the security company skipped me entirely, exactly like their instructions told them to, and called my parents directly as the primary account holders. Halfway across the world in a hotel room in Athens, their dream vacation fell apart in an instant. Their phones lit up with automated security alerts, one after another, followed by a frantic call from the local police describing the mess back home. And then it got worse. While searching the house for anything missing or damaged, officers found that Renee's boyfriend hadn't just thrown a party. He'd also tried to break into my father's closet, where he kept his watch collection, the one he'd spent almost 15 years building and bragging about at every family gathering. Panicked, my parents called me over and over, 7 missed calls in a row, expecting me to drop everything, fly home, and fix it the way I always fix things. When I finally answered, sitting on a lounge chair with my feet in the sand, my mother didn't even say hello. She just started shouting, demanding to know why I wasn't at the house handling the situation, why I hadn't answered sooner, why this was happening at all. I let her finish. I didn't say a single word about the security company or the credit card. I just held the phone toward the ocean for a moment and let the sound of the waves answer for her. "What is that noise?" she demanded, her voice cracking somewhere between rage and panic. I took a slow sip of my drink and looked out at the water, bright turquoise, completely calm, nothing like the chaos on the other end of the line. "That's the ocean, Mom," I said. I told her I was on a beach thousands of miles away on the vacation I had already paid for with my own money. I reminded her that Duke was safe, fed, walked twice a day, and cared for by actual professionals, and that the plants were watered exactly as asked every single day on schedule. I had done what they told me to do, I just hadn't given up my own life to do it. There was a long silence before Renee grabbed the phone, yelling that I had ruined her life and got her boyfriend arrested, that this was somehow my fault for not being at the house. I didn't argue with her either. I just repeated her own words back to her slowly so she couldn't pretend she hadn't said them. That's just my job in this family, remember? I told them my job as the family's built-in babysitter, the one who dropped everything so their lives could stay comfortable, was officially over. The fallout was immediate and honestly bigger than I expected. Because of their own favoritism, and because they'd trusted Renee's judgment over mine one too many times, my parents had to cut their trip short after only 8 days. They lost thousands of dollars in non-refundable bookings, the wine tour, the boat trip, all of it forfeited. They had to book last-minute emergency flights home at nearly triple the original price to deal with the police report, a trashed house, broken furniture, and Renee's boyfriend's arrest. For the first time in years, maybe ever, they had to handle a real problem without handing it to me first. It's been 3 months since that morning on the beach, and one quiet decision changed the direction of my whole life. I used that clarity to finally move into my own apartment across town, something I'd been putting off for years without really understanding why. I pulled way back from my family, on my own terms this time, answering calls when I want to and letting the rest go to voicemail. Renee's boyfriend ended up taking a plea deal for the break-in and the attempted theft. My parents were left to deal with the consequences of years of favoritism, a damaged house, a canceled trip, and the real cost of treating me like a convenience instead of a daughter. My mother has tried once or twice to bring up the misunderstanding, as she calls it. I've told her gently but clearly that there's nothing to misunderstand. I just stopped being available on demand. Renee, for her part, still hasn't apologized, and I've stopped waiting for it. Priya says I look different now, lighter somehow, and I think she's right. I finally booked a second trip last month, just for myself this time, no folder full of other people's plans, no dog schedule to work around, just mine. I'd love to know, what would you have done in my place? Have you ever had to stand up to your own family after years of being taken for granted, of being the one everyone counted on but nobody thanked? Tell me in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching until the end, and I'll see you in the next story.